All right, Craig's back to talk about the Morgan Rielly, Ridly Greig situation, I guess we'll call it, Craig. We'll call it a situation. We're going to wait. We're probably going to find out Tuesday what the punishment will be for Rielly. I'm curious to get your thoughts on the incident itself. Can you defend what Rielly did to Ridly Greig?
The act of cross-checking somebody in the head can never be defended under any circumstances. And understanding that Morgan Rielly at that point in the game, there's emotion, there's disappointment, and feeling like, oh boy, I don't like what Ridly Greig did. Okay, I get all that. But there's no rationale, zero, for going over and delivering a cross-check to the head of a player. And in terms of a hockey play, it's not tolerated. We saw David Perron, which was, I would say, a hockey play that really went bad because David Perron didn't recognize what had unfolded there. He got 6 games. This is a non-hockey play. It's at the end of a play and at the end of a game. And regardless of how you think about Ridly Greig's actions into the open net, certainly it doesn't warrant a cross-check to the head. And there's nothing that should put a player, regardless of what Ridly Greig did and how you feel about it, into that situation. And certainly Morgan Rielly's going to pay a price. There's no question about it. The Toronto Maple Leafs are going to pay a price without their best defender for a number of games. And what you hope is that doesn't come back and be a real material turning point on the downside for the Toronto Maple Leafs going ahead. When you look at the whole thing, this is not about intent. We know he didn't intend to hit him in the head. It doesn't change the act. And the act was something that is unnecessary. It speaks to a player that lost his discipline and lost his composure. And that's not something you want from a player at any point.
We just heard Ryan Reaves' comments from Monday, Craig, and they're comments that, frankly, I think a lot of people actually agree with. He said things like, make hockey violent again. What's your take on what Ryan Reaves had to say?
Well, Ryan Bluster Reaves, I say that kiddingly, he's got a lot of bluster, and he's got a lot of character, and he's got a lot to say. That's just a phrase. Okay, lad, make hockey violent again. It's not happening. I'm going to remind people of what the current president of the Toronto Maple Leafs, Brendan Shanahan, said when he was the head of the Department of Player Safety. He said, the game that we played, talking about himself and others, is not the game being played now. It's a different game, and the game is progressing in different ways. And so, Ryan, the game isn't going back to how it was played when you entered the league. It's not going back to how it was played before you entered the league. This game is now played with a safety in mind and not allowing these types of plays to happen, regardless of how you feel slighted. Because ultimately, for Morgan Rielly, he felt slighted. And the fact is that people want to say, oh, he had to react. Okay, did he have to react with a cross-check to the head? No, he didn't. Nothing can be acceptable about that type of play. And while I understand what Ryan is trying to say, it's not going to hold anything. This game has progressed since Ryan entered the league. It will continue to progress. And certainly, talking about making the game violent again, it's not something that is even, forget about under consideration. It's really something that when you really think about it, it's quite silly.
Yeah, it's not going back there. There's no question about it. The Sens, on the other hand, Craig, very unified. They speak out in support of Greig on Monday. How'd you feel about players like Josh Norris, Timmy Stützle having Ridly Greig's back?
So this is fascinating to me, Jay, and it's fascinating to me in this thing. So I just talked about how the game is not going back and how it's progressing. So there was so much talk on Saturday after the game. Oh, Claude Giroux didn't defend Ridly Greig. Well, Tim Stützle and Josh Norris did. Two stars in the National Hockey League, young players that are supporting Ridly Greig. And does it not speak that the future of the game, that the present of the game, is in the hands of the young players? I think it is. And I think the fact that Josh Norris and Tim Stützle spoke in that manner speaks volumes. I think it's declarative, and certainly when you consider now how Trevor Zegras was treated, other players at different points in time, because things change and we get to a different type of element in the game, that all of a sudden, oh no, we can't have that. That's not the way the game was played. You're right. It's not the way the game was played. but it's the way the game is played now, and the present and the future of this game is in the hands of the young players.
Morgan Rielly's hearing scheduled for Tuesday. Hopefully we'll get some clarity at that point about exactly how much time the Leafs defenseman will miss. Craig, when you're gone, I'll say this. We'll miss you, buddy.
I'll miss you too.